This.
Okay. Welcome to LOOM, a space where the threads of lived experience, energy, and insight are gently woven into a path of remembering, reconnection, and becoming. Today, I'm joined by Lisa Aston Michael. Lisa is a psychic medium, animal energy healer, and animal communicator whose work bridges the physical and spiritual experience for both humans and animals. Lisa's based in Cairns here in Australia, and she works with people and their animal companions through mediumship, intuitive communication, and energy healing. She supports animals who are with us as well as those who have passed over, helping their guardians understand behaviour, emotion, and the energetic stories playing out beneath it. Her journey has moved through early intuitive awareness, spiritual study, spontaneous awakening, animal Reiki, and the development of her capacity to hear, feel, and translate the consciousness of animals. Lisa is also the host of the Enlightened Connections podcast, where she explores healings, intuition, and the wisdom shared between humans and their pets. Lisa, welcome. It's wonderful to have you join me today.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. So I'd love to begin by weaving the story of how you arrived here and how those early experiences shaped the way you communicate with both people and their animals today.
Gosh. I was a musician, a professional musician. I hosted a radio show. I was a publicist. I promoted musicians all over the world. Everything in my life was music. And I experienced something completely unexpected that changed my life 180 degrees. I was actually in the throes of recording a second album, and I was in my car, and the car in front of me hit a bird, a low-flying rainbow lorikeet, which, for your listeners that may not be familiar with our Aussie birds, is a parrot, a very colourful parrot. And I could see the other bird flapping and fluttering around absolutely maniacally. And I'm sitting in my car watching this, feeling quite normal, a little bit concerned and sad. But all of a sudden, I had heart palpitations. I felt sick. I felt massive grief. I felt all these strange emotions, as if it was my child or my loved one that had just been hit by that car. It was the same degree of panic. It's very difficult to describe. And I thought I was having a heart attack. So I just sat there and I thought, all right, what do I do? What do I do? Calm down, calm down. And as the remaining bird, after a little while flew off, my symptoms disappeared. And I thought, this is very strange, very strange. So I didn't have the left arm pain or anything that is associated with heart issues. Cutting a long story short, there was a Body, Mind, Spirit festival occurring where I lived, and I went there and I had a Reiki treatment. And while I was just relaxing, I heard the words animal Reiki. So I asked the practitioner what that was. She didn't actually know. So that began my journey of, okay, well, what is it about animal healing? What's happened to me? What did I experience? So that was the beginning really of the spiritual journey of unfolding what I was feeling. And from that animal, I was later to find out what I experienced was called a spontaneous awakening. And from that day, Michelle, I actually literally feel what an animal is feeling. So for example, if they're feeling sorry, it can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual. So if they're feeling pain, I can feel that in my body. If they're feeling emotionally distraught, I can feel that in my body. Even if they're seeing spirit, seeing spirit, I can also feel that as well. So that's what has happened to me, and that was the foray into leading me into my animal work.
Wow, how interesting. So when you say that, that it's commonly referred to as a spontaneous awakening, previously to that, had you had any experience with spirituality or spiritual practices at all, or were you completely unprepared?
No, I had experience with it. I was actually raised like a lot of other people. I was raised in a Catholic church, and I always had two things. I always had a psychic sense, a highly positioned psychic sense as a child. But the other thing that I thought was quite odd at the time was that I always preferred the company of animals, to the point where if my mum would drop me off at a party, other school kids,
Mm.
I could never handle the screaming and the noise and the carry on of other children. I would always leave, and wherever I was, much to my mum's chagrin, I would find a dog in that neighborhood. I'd just hunt out a dog. I don't know
Mm.
the people, I don't know where I was going, what I was doing. I would find a dog and I would hang out with that dog, and then eventually I'd go back to the party when I knew mum was going to pick me up at X o'clock. So I always had a relationship with animals where I felt there was this simpatico, there was this understanding and this support from animals, this emotional support from animals. So I didn't give it, of course, much thought when I was a child, but through my life, I've always had that kind of relationship with animals, but not to the degree that I do now. But I always had that psychic bent. I was interested in tarot, interested in just giving people readings out of the blue. I'd get messages for people, but I never thought it was anything that I wanted to act upon, because I was hell bent on a career as a professional musician. Yeah.
Fair enough too. Um, so that's really interesting, and it allows people to understand that sometimes these abilities do come to us very, flash in the pan, and that if unfortunately if you don't have some sort of grounding and practice, that it's probably a good idea there to start deep diving and formalizing that. So for people who are curious but unsure what animal communication really is, how do you describe your process, and what happens when you tune into an animal's consciousness, whether or not they're living here with us still on the earth plane, or for those that have passed over?
Okay, that's a great question, Michelle. Everything, it's a little cliche these days, but everything truly is connected. Everything is energy. If you look at the dog as being a dog, that's a Labrador, that's a Chihuahua, that's a Cocker Spaniel, that's, you've got to, you see past that. So in answer to your question, when I work with an animal, I find it best, I work with photographs, I work remotely, and I find that easier for the simple reason that I don't get entangled in the energy of the person or the house, the environment. I'm in a space of my own, and I will look at the photo. I will then go into my own preparation, which is being very still. It's the same preparation as for mediumship. You become very still. You clear your mind. You just let your thoughts go past, because the brain panics if it doesn't have something to think about. So you just let those thoughts go, let them go like little clouds. I let them go. And I say to myself over and over, be still, be still, be still. Then I imagine a light within myself, first within my chest, and I see that light expanding. And then I let the light expand out. I don't push it. I just allow it to expand organically. And whilst this is happening, I'm sending a cord from my heart to the animal that I'm working with. Could be a horse or a dog or whoever it is. So I send that cord and I connect. And then I surround them in my mind, visually. I surround them in a soft pink light, and I ground them. So animals are always grounded anyway, because they walk around with their paws on the ground. Well, when I say animals, I mean the land animals, right? So they're already grounded. But I surround them in a soft pink light, and then I see us both in a bubble. So we're connected by light, we're connected by a bubble, we're connected by energy. And then I ask their permission. I always ask their permission, the same as I would if I was doing a mediumship reading for a person. Ask the permission. And then I always ask the healers. Now, here's an interesting thing that perhaps a lot of animal communicators may not do. But because I'm a medium, I also always invite in the spirit healers, because there are those in the spirit world that were specialist veterinarians. specialist oncologist, specialist whatever. So I asked them to come in and join us for the session. And then sometimes I use a pendulum, sometimes I use muscle memory, sometimes I just use my solar plexus. And I ask the animals permission, and if I feel that I have it, then I just sit quietly with that animal and allow myself to expand into their space. And something will always start to happen. I will get a picture in my mind's eye, a little similar to if I said, oh, Michelle, think about a pink duck. And so you're going to, in your mind's eye, you're not actually going to see a pink duck walk past. Hopefully you're not. But in your mind's eye, you'll see it, right? So this is how I see a message that might be sent to me from that animal. And animals communicate telepathically. So they will send a picture, and I will start with that picture. And that picture could be food box, a food bowl, or it could be a lead or a collar, or it could be a horse rug, or it could be another horse lying on the ground. I could also get a feeling. I could get a sense of depression washing over me. So I get that starter, and then I let that expand, and I just ask the question and wait. Ask the question and wait. And that's how I receive the information from them. You can't hammer them with 1,000 questions. I don't work like that. Some animal communicators do. They have a list of questions. Do you like your food? Do you like where you sleep? Do you like this? Do you like that? Do you like the cat? I don't do that. I just sit and open and receive either visually or physically in my body. Rarely do I hear anything, rarely. But that's primarily how I communicate and connect with the animals. Whether they're here or in spirit doesn't matter. If I've got a visual of them, I can connect with them.
Okay, and what would be some of the primary reasons that an owner would come to you asking you to have this connective experience with their pets?
Mostly it's because pet parents, excuse me, mostly it's because pet parents love their animals. They love them, and more often than not, their family. The other reasons could be because they've taken them to the vet and they've gone through a series of treatments and they're not quite getting the answers that they're wanting. And that's not a criticism in any way, shape or form against veterinarians. It's just that as an animal communicator, we can sometimes tap into the emotions of the animal, whereas vets tend to be more focused on the physical aspects, because that's, of course, how they're trained. So people tend to come to animal communicators as a last resort. They want to know what's wrong. They can't make head nor tail of it. The medication's not working, or perhaps it's a behavioural thing that's very out of the ordinary, but nothing seems to have really physically changed around them. Perhaps it's a decision that the pet parent made, for example, deciding to euthanize their animal, and they don't know whether they did the right thing. Did I do it at the right time for the right reason? Did I make a mistake? How does my pet feel about that? Should I do it? Those sorts of questions and really are the main ones that people come for.
Interesting. And I know we've met previously to having you on today, and one of the things that I was really interested to hear about is that when we had our episode together and I was a guest for you, we were talking about something that my listeners hear me talk about a lot, which is our comfort zone and our comfort meter. And we were talking about how that internally and physiologically we have discomfort in our bodies, or externally we have discomfort in our environment, and how that's usually something we should learn to read, because it's an indicator to us as a human what we need to move away from and move closer to. And I found it interesting that you were talking about how often when you have these sessions with the animals, where the owner is often thinking that the physiological or emotional problem with the animal is about the animal, it's often a direct mirror response to something that's happening to the person or their people or within the home where the animal lives. And I said, it's so interesting that I think if listeners could learn to look at their animals in that respect when they suddenly see changes in behaviour. And it's not obvious, like we've suddenly brought a new baby into the home, so it kind of makes sense that the animal may be displaying a different behaviour. How often that behaviour is them trying to indicate to you that it's something you need to be seeing and managing. Can you talk to that a little bit and how that's come across in some of your experiences?
Absolutely. Animals mirror us. They mirror us on every level, whether it's, again, physical, mental, or spiritual. They will mirror us. And I find that they're always trying to communicate with us to tell us what is going on in our lives.
Mm.
I have to have a bit of a giggle here because my animal colleagues, some of them are healers, some of them are communicators, some of them are acupuncturists, some of them are nutritionists, and that all work with the dog's emotions. And we always have a giggle of when the client comes, we go, oh, here we go, we have to fix the person first, fix the person first. It's a running joke because it's always, well, not always, it's the majority of the time, a great deal of the time, what's going on in the person's world is reflected in the animal. It's
Mm.
reflected. So, for example, if there is a lot of energy in the house, that's a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, and then you'll find, oh, for some reason my cat keeps, hiding under the bed, or my dog won't come into this room anymore, or those sorts of things can happen. And I say, all right, well, let's have a look at what's going on in your life. So then I'll speak to them about that. And most of the time we can find there's a resolution available because what's happening in their life is reflected in their dog's life. And sometimes if I'm doing a reading, a remote viewing reading, I record that reading and the dog will tell me, I'm experiencing this emotion. And I ask, does this emotion belong to you? No, it doesn't. And then I find out who it belongs to. I will say, okay, person, it could be John or Rachel or whoever it is, your dog's just dobbed you in. so I'm going to talk to you about what's going on in your life. And so I do that. And then I might be urged to, or, prompted to pull an oracle card or something to give them some guidance. So the animals are always here to help us, always. Some of them come as healers, some of them come as guardians, some of them come back. Some of them choose to stay in spirit and assist us better from there. But you'll find that animals, especially dogs and horses, are very reactive to their person's energy. Does that answer your question for you?
Yes. No, it's really interesting because just as you were talking about that, and obviously, I mean, I'm aware of it. No, you probably are, but a lot of people may not be. That animals do have that natural sixth sense. Cats are classical for it. If you see your cat staring off into the distance, it's not just staring off into the distance. It's seeing something or it's sensing an energy. And I just think if people can monitor their animals' behaviour, and when they see changes, take a moment to reflect upon what's going on in the home at the moment. And it may not be in the home. It could be that it's happening to you outside the home, but you're bringing the energy of the experience at work or at school or wherever you are back into the home with you. And it could be that it's not you. It could be that it's picking up the energy of your children. They could be experiencing something at school or what have you. But when you think, if your animals are sensitive enough to be picking up on the energies that you're exhibiting, regardless of what that context is, if you have children, that's the same sort of thing that children pick up on in the household when things aren't managed in an appropriate way. So, you may dismiss your children's behaviour as being, oh, it's a terrible twos, or they've just started school, or they're teething, or they're going through puberty or whatever. But when your animal is mirroring a similar type behaviour, it's a good idea for you to stop and think, well, okay, maybe this is not a coincidence that there's, yeah.
And another thing that happens that people don't take into consideration is, again, it's not a criticism, it's just an experience that I've had in the past, is that couples get together, or someone will get together, and someone has a dog, they have a dog. I use a dog as an example because I work mostly with dogs. And they've built a bond with that dog, a relationship with that dog. And then a baby may come along, and all of a sudden that relationship changes, and the dog is relegated to 2IC, to second down the line. Now, what happens is that we don't actually stop to consider what we have done to that relationship, how we've changed that relationship. And so you can often find that dogs become sullen. They can also possibly become aggressive, and not because they're aggressive dogs, but because the relationship has changed. They've been relegated to as an outsider, which to them is, what have I done? What have I done wrong? Why have I been pushed to the back? What's happening? And these, of course, then we've got issues of, biting and aggression and things like that. So I think it's really important to understand that animals are sentient beings. They have the same emotions as us. They do experience joy, sadness, jealousy, anger, things like that. So we've got to understand our relationship with them. That can sometimes be a different, create a different atmosphere in the home. I'll just give you one example here. I had a client some time ago, and she had a dog that was a Springer Spaniel. And when I came over, the dog was in a cage, a dog crate, because she said it will literally just bang the fence down if you come in. And it was very angry and aggressive, and okay, she's not normally like this. So I sat down with her, and she said, should I let the dog out? I said, no, leave her there, leave her there. And we sat down and said, could we have a cup of tea? And she's probably thinking, oh, who is this person asking for tea? And I said, there's a reason for this. So we sat down at a little table and chairs beside the cage, had some tea, and I said, do you have any treats? So got some treats, and I said, now let her out. And she came over and she sat down, and she just sat with me, and I gave her a treat, and I just started connecting with her. And again, cutting a long story short, she shared with me that it was the loud bang bangs, and I thought, oh God, I hope no one's been shot. And I said to the lady, do you have your television on very loud, and what kind of shows do you watch? And it turns out that her husband was a little on the deaf side. He was a fly-in, fly-out machine operator, and he liked watching the police shows and had the TV up full bore with the bang, 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 bang going on. This was driving the dog out of its mind and creating the anger and, stimulating the dog into its unusual aggressive activity. So I shared that with her, and she talked to her husband about it, who thought it was all, BS and woo-woo, but they tried it anyway. I said, give it a shot. What have you got to lose? Give it a shot. So once he turned it down, I don't know how they solved the issue, but she came back to me and said, this is so much better. Bella has quietened down exponentially. So there's things like that we don't consider. We just think we don't consider how the animal is reacting to our direct environment in the home. We can say, do you mind turning that TV down? It's a little loud. We just assume they have to tolerate it.
That's right. And I think it's important to understand too that it's kind of like dealing with small children that haven't developed language. They can't speak to us unless we're like you and we can communicate with them through mediumship. So they have to communicate to us through sounds, barking, growling, biting, just like your child does before they have language and they need to get your attention. So it's not that's right. If for us, we may be perceiving it as, oh, they're being aggressive, but for them, they're trying to get your attention for a reason.
100%.
And you're not listening.
100%. Or you don't know how to listen. I think that's a big one. So I feel every single person can communicate with their animals. Every single person. There is a procedure, there are steps to do, but it is doable, because if you have ever heard your phone ring and without picking it up, you've gone, oh, I know that. Oh, that's Jane. Just that instantaneous thought. And then you pick up the phone and guess who? It's Jane. Right? Everyone, that's happened to everyone. that's your telepathy. That's your telepathy. Or equally, you've thought, gee, I haven't heard from Kate forever. And the next thing, Kate rings. I was just thinking about you. That's bizarre. It's the same technique. It's the same thing as connecting and communicating with animals. It's the same thing, except you become consciously aware of how to do that rather than just by chance.
It's so interesting, isn't it? So when we say animals, like there's a huge collective of creatures that fall into animals. Um, I would assume, and I could be wrong, but I would assume that anything that falls into the non-human species category within reason, you have that capacity to communicate in this way.
I believe so. I believe so. I have had very strange experiences. I was talking about this to someone the other day where I was driving back from Townsville and stopped to get a mango milkshake, and there was like a waterfall with river rocks around it. And I saw this one rock and I thought, oh, beautiful. I would love to take that home. And as I went over to pick up this rock, I got this feeling of don't move me. And it was so clear, and I went, oh, okay, that was weird. Okay, I won't. It was an unusual feeling because it was not, I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything. I just got this very strong, immediate command, do not move me. Oh, all right. So I can't say that I've incorporated rocks into my practice, but if that's a sense or that's a feeling that I could glean from an inanimate object, such as a rock, which is, of course, I don't know if it's sentient, I haven't looked into it, but everything is vibrating, everything is energy, so why not? Why not communicate with everything?
How interesting. Or I suppose if you want to think of it a bit more outside the box, it could be that there may have been an animal that resided in that space that that had now passed over that was going, don't move it. Or it could have been something hiding under there that didn't want like yeah,
That's right.
it's just so interesting.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most unusual animal that you've had to work with?
A rat. I would say a rat. Because rats they get a bad rap. They get a bad name. They're regarded as vermin and dirty and poisonous and horrible, and people just want to eradicate rats.
I don't mind rats. My son had a rat.
I don't
quite taken
find
by him.
that. Yeah, I don't find that about rats. I find rats are incredibly gentle, loving, family orientated beings. They're very organized, they're very private. But the strangest one I had, it still upsets me to this day actually. I was in my laundry and I looked outside and there was a rat standing there at my door. And I thought, what's going on? Okay, so I didn't want to frighten him because they've had such a bad experience with humans. They tend to kind of keep distance from us, you know? So anyway, I thought, okay, well, I feel this rat's in trouble. So I came out the long way around my house. Big story, but you don't need to know that now. And as I came around, it was no longer standing, it was lying on its side, right outside my laundry door. And it had moved on to a little grassy bit. And I sat there and I thought, oh, this isn't good. This isn't good. So I could see that this rat was dying. Someone had put baits down. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't help it. So I sat there and I went into a space with this rat and I asked for Archangel Felier, who oversees the animal kingdom, to be with this being, this rat being, and take him or her very gently across to spirit. And this went on for about 15 minutes and it was not a nice experience. If you've ever seen an animal pass from baits, it's not nice. But I was with him or her the whole time. And when the rat passed away, I put some desert rose petals and just sat in the space until a certain amount of time had passed, which I felt was ready. And then I buried this rat. Now, a lot of people might think, why would you?
It's just a rat.
It's just a rat. It's actually a one of the divine's creations. So I have respect, great, grand respect for all animals. So I buried this rat in ceremony and flowers and the whole thing, which was a very shamanic experience. But what happened the next day blew my mind. I was looking out my kitchen window and there were 3 baby rats playing in the backyard.
Mm.
And I thought, this is extremely unusual because during the day the birds will take them.
Mm.
What are they doing foraging out in the mid-morning?
Mm.
So I thought, oh my gosh, I put 2 and 2 together. This was the mother.
Ah.
So I thought, okay, so I just put some food down, and every day for about 3 weeks or so, these 3 little teenagers came out, had a little bit of meat, had a little bit of water. I looked after them until they were old enough to be self-sufficient, and off they went. But to this day, I feel like she came, I was saying him or her in the beginning, but I feel that it was a message or an asking of me to look after the young ones. It was just such an unusual experience. For I've never had that happen before. That was quite unusual. Yeah.
And that's a lovely message in itself, that if you are in your home and you do suddenly see a random animal appear, which would not normally be that friendly, like normally you would expect a rat to run the other way, not sit and wait for you to engage, that it could be because that animal's going through something similar, and to just take that moment to be conscious of it and to be with it. And even though my listeners probably don't have the skill set that you or I have in that capacity, it's still around the energy exchange of the compassion for that animal who's obviously come to you for a reason, and that's why. So that's really, really interesting. So Lisa, if any of my listeners are thinking, I've sort of have a concern about my dog, whether it's because the dog has a health problem that hasn't been able to be properly diagnosed, or the dog is becoming elderly, or anything at all that they may be concerned about, and they hadn't actually thought about this sort of option to delve deeper into what could be going on, how do they reach out to you, and what do they need to do?
Okay, well, the first step I will always say, go to the vet first. I will always say that, mainly because animal communicators in Australia are not allowed by law to diagnose. So even if I knew what was going on, I can't actually diagnose as such, but I can share what I'm feeling. So first step would be go to the vet. If it's a physical thing. If it's an emotional thing, I would say you could reach out to me as an animal communicator. There are many animal communicators, but make sure, do your homework. Really do your homework. Make sure that you check into the testimonials, you check into the background, you check into the amount of time that they've been doing this work, because you're the voice of the animal, and it's a sacred and precious gift to be able to do that. So if someone wanted to reach out to me, it's just my name, Lisa Aston Michael. Google it, and everything else you can find me from there. lisaastonmichael.com. I'm on Facebook as Animal Healing Practitioner, and the same on Instagram and so on and so forth.
Or they can reach out through your podcast and always leave a comment for the podcast as well. I'll make sure all of that information is in the show notes as well. So if anybody wants to go back and find all that out easily, I'll add that into there. Is there anything else that you wanted to add around this topic that you think the listeners might find useful?
Yeah. Yes, I actually teach this. I teach animal communication and psychic development. I teach it twice a year. But I'm also just about to teach it on School, SKOOL. I'm about to teach modules on School. It'll be early next year. It'll start early next year. So I like to teach people how to do this themselves so that they're not reliant on somebody like me, that they can have 24/7 access to being able to connect and communicate with their own animals at any time. Did that freeze?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the video to come back. I can hear you, but the video is frozen.
Okay.
Which was perfect. There we go. It was perfect timing because it was just as you finished your sentence. So I thought I didn't panic. So I'll pick up where we left off. So thanks for that, Lisa. That's really interesting. And I can imagine it would be something that for people who directly work with animals, whether they're in the veterinarian space or in the rescue space or in shelters, it would be an amazing skill to develop, regardless of whether somebody might go, oh, I'm really good at that, or I just intuitively get a feeling, to assist them in their day-to-day engagement with the animals that they care for.
Absolutely, 100%. Whether they're animal trainers, behaviorists, zookeepers, every animal communicates. It doesn't matter. And in the zoos, a lot of people are anti-zoo, but I think it's super important to mention, if I can squeeze it in, that zoo animals they have an understanding of their importance. And I repeat this from a good friend, a colleague of mine who works with the zoo ambassadors. She's actually a shaman, and she works with the zoo ambassadors, and she visits various zoos and talks to the animals there because they represent their species and they share a lot of information and they know that they're there to educate. So it's a really important thing to understand that not all zoos are horrible places. The animals there are actually aware of their position and aware of their purpose.
Amazing. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and as I said, I was particularly interested from the perspective that it's another tool that the listeners can use to measure their own environment and what's happening. And if they suddenly see changes in their pets, which is part of their environment, to take a moment to think, okay, what's happening, and could this be that they're mirroring me? And what are they trying to tell me? And do I need to go and see a doctor? Do I need to go and have a conversation with someone? Do I need to take more time for myself because they could be trying to tell me something? So I think it's really important to remember that they're a member of our significant pack, even though they're not humans. They are a part of our family unit, and as such, they respond to that overall energy, just as we do in our significant other and our children and everybody else around us. So such an interesting topic. I will put all of that information in the show notes for anybody who wants to reach out to Lisa and get some more information, or who would like to look at her upcoming course. Is that going to be this year, Lisa, or next year on school?
No, it'll be next year. It's generally around May. May and September each year I will teach the course. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'll make sure that information's there for anybody who might be interested. And again, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure people will have lots of questions because it's not a topic that's commonly discussed in this spiritual sort of space. And if this conversation has resonated with you, you can follow LOOM wherever you listen to your podcasts. That way you won't ever miss an episode. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and for honouring your own rhythm. And thank you, Lisa, for joining us. And I'll meet everybody in our next episode.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Thanks, Lisa.